Hi, I'm Arsen Kashkashian, the head buyer here at the Boulder Bookstore, and we're here to talk about some great new books. They're all nonfiction. As most of you know, I shouldn't say most of you, as some of you know, I am a fiction lover, but I also am a big reader of the news, and I do dabble in nonfiction, and there's a lot of interesting books out there that are coming out in the last few weeks. All these books have come out in June, which talk about our current moment in some way or another, I think. So we're going to start off with Inclusify by Stephanie K. Johnson. Stephanie is a PhD up at CU, so she's a local here. And one of the things that drew me to this book, I'll be honest, is I'm kind of a word guy, and Inclusify, I love when people kind of make up words that make sense. So Inclusify is kind of a combination of include and diversify. And what she's saying is people have a need to fit in, but they also have a need to stand out. And in a work situation or any kind of situation where you have a team of people, it seems like we go to one extreme or the other. Everybody's got to fit in, or everybody's going to be an iconoclast and be doing something different. And neither one of those quite works. You need to have teams where people can fit in to some extent, be included, but have a diversity of ideas, opinions, people, and you need to do both of those. So this is a very interesting look, and I think as people talk more and more about diversity, you have to figure out a way that that this all works. Whether it's diversity of ideas, diversity of people, you bring them together and you get a successful team, because otherwise, as she says, you'll have a team where no one feels included, and that's not very helpful, and you're probably not going to get a lot of work done. So, Inclusify by Stephanie K. Johnson. As I said, I love words, so I was drawn to this book, Word Slut. And this is kind of a feminist look at language and how words like hussy began their life, meaning housewife, began its life as housewife and is turned into a feminine derogative. Slut kind of meant messy person, and now, of course, it's a feminine derogative. And so she really breaks down language and how it's been used against women, also used against transgendered people, and to be insulting, when really language, a lot of the freshness and things that have come into language have been brought in by women. And so it's a very interesting look at language. It's like kind of several different essays. I like time to make this book just a little bit gayer, and there's essay on, how to get back at a catcaller, how to embarrass people who correct your grammar. So it's a great word book and touches on some of the topics that are going on today. This next book is called Prophetic City, Houston on the Cusp of a Changing America. So you might think it's odd that I'm recommending a book about Houston, but I'm doing it for a couple of reasons. I actually lived in Houston for about a year. And my experience of Houston was it was a very diverse city. And Kleinberg makes the point that it's actually the most ethnic and culturally diverse city in the country. I would have guessed New York City or Los Angeles for that title. But my experience in Houston, there was a large African American community, there was a large Latino community, there was a large Asian American community. Where I worked, which was the book stop at the Alabama Theater down in Houston, beautiful Art Deco theater, was the gay neighborhood. There was a very thriving gay neighborhood. It was certainly, when I moved there, not what I imagined any place in Texas would be like. And those trends have just continued. And he talks about how Houston might represent sort of what the future of America is. This kind of polyglot, this kind of bringing together of people of all different races, ethnicities, sexual preferences. It's all happening in Houston. And so I thought it was a really interesting look at a city that probably people in Colorado don't think too much about or think, oh, that's just Texas. The Deviant War, the Homosexual versus the United States of America. So as many of you probably know, there was a great Supreme Court ruling in favor of gay rights, where it said that the transgendered people, gay people, were included in the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And so that was a huge Supreme Court ruling this week. This takes us back to kind of the dawn of the gay liberation movement, where a guy was fired from the Pentagon in the 50s. and for being gay, or for being suspected of being gay. And so he fought back, and he formed an organization, and it went throughout the 60s, and they went to the courts, and they started fighting. And it was really the first organized kind of fighting for gay rights that really happened in this country. This is a big history. It's well researched. He looked at thousands and thousands of personal letters and government documents from the time. So this is really a deep dive into the history of gay rights. This is kind of the opposite in a way. This is called the Verso Book of Dissent, put out by Verso Publishing. It's a history of dissent from like 2000, BC to the present day, and it's organized chronologically. You get all these great little pieces, little short speeches, writings, things like that. I thought I would just quickly read something that appears towards the end of the book, but I thought it was very apt for what is happening now, and it's from Angela Davis from 1998, called Mass Racism. Prisons do not disappear problems. They disappear human beings. And the practice of disappearing vast numbers of people from poor, immigrant, and racially marginalized communities has literally become big business. That's Angela Davis in 1998. And as we know, the prison complex has just gotten bigger. The instances of African American people in prison has just exploded in those 22 years since Angela Davis said that. But there's lots of great things in here. I found it very inspiring to thumb through this book and see the different things. Helen Keller, Why I Became a Socialist. So, all sorts of things in there. Stacey Abrams, she ran for Senate in Georgia last year, or 2 years ago. She lost. A lot of people think she lost because of voter suppression. She lost to a Republican candidate who was in charge of the vote. And so he was in charge of deciding who could vote and who couldn't to some extent in Georgia. And he took a lot of people off the voter rolls. Abrams is a longtime advocate for voting rights. And in this book, she really gets into fighting voter suppression, what needs to happen to turn the politics around. And hopefully we're going to see some of her work really come to fruition in November. I think she's really an interesting figure, and I think we'll be seeing her on the national stage for years to come. And I think, this is an important book as we head into these next 4 or 5 months. And then I love music. I love blues music. I'm always intrigued by the history of blues music, whether it's Chicago blues with Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy, Delta blues with John Lee Hooker. So this is about Robert Johnson, Brother Robert, growing up with Robert Johnson. So Robert Johnson, as many people know, died like in the late 30s. I mean, a long, long time ago. This is actually a biography of him from his half-sister, who's in her 90s now. And so this is kind of like a book that you could never imagine was really going to be written. How could you have a first-person account of Robert Johnson? But she does it. And a lot of people consider Johnson kind of the father figure of modern blues, of blues in general. And so this is just an intriguing look and a flashback, almost like a time machine look of what his life was like. So that's the books. I hope you enjoy them. I hope everybody stays safe and healthy. Thanks for tuning in.